My name's Christian, and welcome to my YouTube channel where we talk about video games in gross detail. The following video goes into deep analysis concerning Final Fantasy VII Remake, so if you don't want to be spoiled before you play it, it might be a good idea to turn back now. Given the large amount of time we've had to ponder in our brains and let the idea of a modern Final Fantasy VII materialize and fester, I think the 5 years we've waited for the remake to release has given everyone a chance to reflect upon what they truly want from a remake of a game that has undeniably shown some age. Even after all this time, hilariously enough, I think many of us have come to wildly different conclusions on what sets Final Fantasy VII apart from other games in the genre. A lot of JRPGs have always had a fondness for preachy concepts and topics such as the battles between good and evil, the power of friendship, and those who defy their destiny, and while Final Fantasy VII has some of this, it is ultimately so much more than the sum of its parts. Final Fantasy VII is ultimately a game about people. Very flawed and distorted people trying to find their footing in a world that seems to push them down at every single turn. Sure, Final Fantasy VII gets into some of that preachy territory in that final quarter of the game, but nonetheless, I've always found the smaller moments between characters to be much more impactful. One of my favorite moments in the entire game is a scene that many may not even see upon their first playthrough. During Chapter 16, in which the party are rescuing Aerith from Shinra HQ, you are given two different decisions to advance: take an elevator up to the 59th floor, or to take on the daunting task of climbing 59 flights of stairs in an attempt to go unnoticed. Upon choosing to use the stairs, we are given a playable segment in which we physically do climb them. And at the start of this intimidating task, the crew shares lighthearted banter, but as the floor number rises, Cloud slows down, and so do Barrett and Tifa. The music starts to slowly distort as all three party members talk much less, and Barrett starts to go slightly insane singing a melody about climbing stairs, and eventually you reach the point where virtually no dialogue is spoken at all. In most games I would find the silence to be problematic and kind of lazy, but given the way the stair climbing scene was built up and the clear struggle all the characters are having in that given moment, the silence becomes so earned and powerful. Within this small moment, the game doesn't need the characters to speak, because they are all facing the same struggle, they're feeling the same way, and they're all equally miserable. The silence provided in this last portion of this ingenious scene leaves enough pieces to help the player put together all the information they need to know about the predicament the party finds themselves in. They probably know exactly what each other is thinking, probably something along the lines of, "Wow, I really regret taking the frickin' stairs." And it's in moments like this that Remake not only improves upon the original, but adds humanity and depth to portions of Final Fantasy VII that I never even knew needed it. Remake works this sense of realism into every facet of its world by putting the player directly in the shoes of the main characters, forcing them to experience all the gloom and unfairness that Midgar has to offer to those living under its plate. Chapter 3 and its exploration of the Sector 7 slums might be the most obvious example of this within the game. In the original Final Fantasy VII, the Sector 7 slums functioned as little more than a small break from the action of the opening act. And while that function is still served within Remake, the complexity of something that at first appeared simple is so apparent. Once you get to the slums, Cloud reconnects with his childhood friend Tifa, learns about a suspicious neighbor that he lives with named Marco, and meets all new faces like Marl and Johnny. The slums of Midgar are no longer simply a means to get from point A to B, they are now a larger community that Cloud has seemingly stumbled into. This is further strengthened upon Cloud's new position as the mercenary of the town, taking on odd jobs for those who live in genuine poverty. Final Fantasy VII Remake gives the player such a real depiction of what life is like in the slums, and it frankly isn't pretty. Many of the slums are not more than glorified dump sites with the less fortunate citizens barely able to fit themselves into small colonies. Slum life is hard, monsters attack often, the living conditions aren't good, and money is hard to come by. In Remake, Cloud's position as a mercenary gives the player yet another opportunity to immerse themselves in the world. The player is no longer just told that the slums are a dangerous and unsafe place to live, they are literally shown this through your contributions and interactions with the townspeople. Much of the same can be said for Sector 5 slums as well, but in this instance the game changes the way it uses the setup. In Sector 5, the townspeople's interactions with Aerith, our new party member that we presumably don't know much about, help to paint her as someone who is very indebted and connected to her community. And in these small moments of interaction, the world building enriches the characters in ways that most games simply don't commit to. The slums of Midgar and the characters within it share this mutually beneficial relationship in which both the real-feeling world and the human-like characters are both rewarded. Remake has plenty of epic, bombastic scenes to marvel at for sure, but truthfully, these small interactions and moments are what stuck with me throughout my first playthrough, because in these moments, the slums of Midgar feel like a real tangible place with real tangible people. It feels like you could actually visit each slum because you've experienced the struggles of slum life for yourself on multiple different occasions. Chapter 9 builds upon these concepts, introducing a myriad of new characters like Madame M, Chocobo Sam, and of course the nefarious and slimy Don Corneo. In nearly any other game, the sudden introduction of seemingly inconsequential characters will potentially make the story seem kind of muddled, but through Remake's fantastic world building and character writing, Wall Market gains a sense of identity all its own. When you walk around, you really get the feeling you're traversing a large commercial district with crime rampant, and if Don Corneo's character and physical appearance isn't a larger metaphor for the kind of place Wall Market is as a whole, I simply don't know what could be. Once again, we see the fantastic world building and the awesome character writing working together to enrich the experience as a whole. However, all this talk about the world and characters coexisting does not mean that characters cannot stand on their own, because they absolutely do. The moment that really sold me on Remake's improved take on these characters is in Chapter 13, after the Sector 7 plate falls. Within this sequence of scenes, Barrett has an emotional breakdown, coming to the recognition that his friends, who were as passionate towards his movement as he was, are gone. On top of this, as far as he knows, so is his daughter. Barrett sits there, punching the rubble, screaming, as Tifa comes behind him, implying that maybe the actions of Avalanche led to this. While Barrett responds that it was ultimately Shinra who had the final call, from this point on there is an apparent doubt in him as he realizes that his actions are what indirectly caused this. He asks for validation in the form of a question, and Tifa very slowly agrees, but obviously shows signs of reluctance. For just a slim second, you can see he is the slightest bit unsure about the path he has taken. In the original game, this was not even a topic for discussion. Barrett hated Shinra and grieved for his friends, but he never doubted his actions. This moment within itself paints the moral dilemma of Barrett in a sort of gray way. It's kind of hard to say if he did the right thing or not. As if this brilliant scene was not enough, the next following scene actually develops Barrett even further. While the party is unsure of Marlene's fate, and Cloud refuses to give Barrett a definite answer on if she's safe, Barrett stops him in his tracks. He tells Cloud that just this once he wants him to say that Marlene is safe, even if that ends up being untrue, he won't hold that against Cloud. And soon after saying this, he goes back on his statement claiming he would probably rip off Cloud's head if Marlene turned out to be gone. In scenes like this, the characters almost become sentient. This is truly masterful character writing in which Barrett's desperation and dread take control of him. And within that moment, although I already knew Marlene was okay, I connected with Barrett's self-doubt and I felt that same dread. It's small interactions and moments like this that make Remake such a special experience to me. Remake thrives most when it sucks you into its desolate world with people that have lived in it for a prolonged period of time. The game can be epic, and for sure I could talk about the crazier things like that final boss fight or the ending, but at the end of the day, what I take away from Remake is the journey, the characters, and the places I found along the way. Even when I had played the original game when I was only 12 years old, the first thing I noticed about Final Fantasy VII was its amazing world and realistic portrayal of the people that live in it. And now that Remake is out and I've seen almost everything it has to offer, I can say with confidence that every facet of this game is more human than I ever thought it could be. And even a decade after playing the original game, this new portrayal of Midgar and its characters has touched me all over again. And that's all I have to say about Final Fantasy VII Remake today. I still have a lot of thoughts about this game, and I'm not sure if I'm going to continue with even more projects about it, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video nonetheless. Midgar is such an immersive and amazing place, and I really wanted to give it some of the attention that I feel like it deserves, because in my opinion, one of the most amazing things about Final Fantasy VII is its world. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the little bit of depth that I jumped into. If you guys liked it, maybe subscribe. If you didn't, that's cool too. Leave criticism in the comments, and have a great day, guys. Seriously.